Hi, everyone. Welcome. You've got Rod Crandall here from U.S. Advisors. You have George Steele and Andrew Casilius. Andrew might say Nathan Berglund, but he's Andrew, and I know many of you know him. I
Mhm.
appreciate you guys being here. It is the 17th of February. If you've ever heard me conduct any meeting, you'll always hear me say, I cannot believe that it's the date that it is. And February 17th, it's just where does the time go? So really appreciate you being here. This is what we call our Coach's Corner. And our Coach's Corner occurs every month on the third Thursday of each month. And it's generally focused on identifying clients that we need to speak to and positioning appropriate conversations with those people. So generically speaking, we effectively sell the intentional integration of insurance, and we do that by knowing who to talk to and how to talk to them, right? Words do matter. It's not always what you say, it's how you say it. And today's topic is, how can we take 12 clients in the next 12 months and bring them 3 different solutions and generate $100,000 of revenue? And so we're going to share with you a little bit and unlock the code, if you will, of how you might be able to do that. And again, throughout that, identifying who are the people we need to have these 3 different conversations with. How do we talk about those things? How do these things work? And then ultimately, how do we get paid to help our clients? Right? We really believe in the platinum rule, which is to the extent that we can understand and meet your needs, then ultimately our needs are met. And if we can help clients and we can drive revenue, that's really what we're all about. And so internally, we talk about being good leaders, about helping clients, and about driving revenue. And if you're on this call, hopefully that resonates with you. And in the next 45 minutes to an hour, we're hoping again to give you a roadmap that can help you have a little bit more success in your practice. So throughout this process, if any of you have any questions or comments, please feel free to either throw them in the chat box or even unmute yourself and just excuse yourself and come right online. Candidly, I do enjoy interaction. And on webinars, sometimes it's difficult to get interaction. So if you think you're being rude by interrupting me, I'm telling you right now, you have complete permission to do that. And I actually prefer that. So appreciate you guys. So we'll get started. So when you really look at the production that we've done, and certainly that I've done, so what I do as Chief Integration Officer here at US Advisors is I'm really responsible for running our sales team, responsible for promoting our training and development of advisors, and then I do a lot of joint work. So I do joint work with any given year, maybe between 20 and 30 different advisors, and I've done joint work with maybe over 200 in my career, spanning now almost 21 years. And so when you look at my practice and you look at last year's production, the majority of my production was related to these 3 strategies. And again, as we described, I'm going to show you how 3 strategies of 12 clients can generate $100,000 of gross dealer concession or commission, right? And so those 3 strategies are here on your screen. The first is the supplemental retirement income using a LIRP. LIRP is a life insurance retirement plan, right? Or you can call it non-qualified deferred compensation structures, right? So how do we effectively utilize life insurance as an accumulation tool and do that as efficiently as possible? And why would we do that? And so I'm going to describe that a little bit more for you today. Then secondly, we're going to look at a wealth transfer strategy using a survivorship guaranteed universal life contract. So that's a second to die policy. So I want to show you that you probably have a lot of clients that have more money than they specifically need in their lifetime. They're likely to transfer wealth to future generations. And in doing so, we need to pay attention to how that wealth is transferred. And many people are ignoring the asset class called life insurance. And I want to educate you on how we can appropriately position this asset to be a guaranteed, non-correlated, and income tax-free asset to the heirs. And if you haven't looked at this before, you might be quite surprised at how well the returns are when you utilize this kind of strategy for those that are in good health. And then lastly, we're going to describe a strategy utilizing what I call retirement portfolio protection, which is really long-term care insurance on a hybrid basis. So I'm going to show you a single life example of make that a single premium example of putting money in one time into a life insurance and long-term care combination plan for the purpose of long-term care, which effectively protects the retirement portfolio from a double dipping, and it also effectively protects your AUM. So we're going to go through these 3 different strategies and outline, again, how to talk about these things, show you what kind of revenue can be generated. I want to show you a couple of collateral pieces that we use with clients and even with advisors to bring awareness to these types of topics, and we will go from there. Before I do, Andrew or George, do you have anything to add before I get into the LERP strategy?
Not at this time.
Okay.
No, I think just briefly, we don't have to make this huge change to our practice, right? When you think about it, if you're walking on a straight line, and if you make just a 5-degree change, you're gonna end up way at a different spot down the road. So small changes, small incremental changes will make big difference to your clients' overall protection and obviously to your revenue, to your practice.
It's a very good point, Andrew, and you know I believe in that completely. And the way to make that small change is find the first person to have a conversation with. What you need to do, be intentional with it. Let's find one person and let's have a conversation with them. And if that conversation goes well, they'll take action, and then you're going to be able to more clearly identify the next person to have a conversation with. And so that's what we really want you to be thinking about here today is, of these 3 strategies, do I have people that I can talk to about all of these strategies or just one, and where would I start? And that does bring up a good point that Andrew, we talk a lot about, is that change is hard, right? And so if you're going to make a change, you're going to run into some obstacles. And that's why your success team is hopefully sitting right here in front of you. We know how to do this. We help advisors every single day do this. So if you like what you hear, we're ready to support you, and we can help you get this over the line. So with that, the first strategy, as we discussed, is this life insurance retirement plan, right, or a LERP. And so some of you may or may not be aware, but there was changes to the IRS law called 7702 that made this strategy much more appealing. This occurred now a year ago, Christmas. We actually were calling it the Christmas miracle. And in fact, we did a Coach's Corner directly directed at these types of changes. The short story is that we can put more dollars into an insurance contract than we used to be able to without making it a modified endowment contract, which really means that we've shrunk our net amount at risk, and thus the cost to put a LERP in place is cheaper than it's ever been because we can put more dollars in than we could before, and we have lower cost structures. And I'm going to show you how, for our best clients, we believe distinctly that the cost of insurance is much less than the cost of taxes. And we're even have that belief with the current tax structure the way it is today. And the reality is that we expect that taxes will go up, and possibly quite significantly, right? And to the extent that taxes do go up, this strategy becomes that much better. And so part of what you're going to hear us talking about, not only with this strategy and the others, is shifting from insurance being a cost that I don't want. I don't want this, and I don't want to pay the cost, to an asset, right? And so can we create a complementary asset with these 3 different structures? And we can, and I'm going to show you that. And effectively then, if we can create an asset, then we really can get rid of the cost objection, because we're really just repositioning our assets and creating a complementary asset, and in many cases that has attributes that the other assets don't have. And that's really the key, is that life insurance has such favorable tax attributes that we need to really consider whether this type of structure exists inside of a client's portfolio. Okay, so this gives an idea. Prudential put together this chart, and this chart talks about, with the new 7702 rules, how much more premium can you get in? And it's really based on age, right? So most of our people who put together these structures are probably between 30 and 50. And so if you're 30 years old, we can put in approximately 130% more than we could before. It's just really incredible. I mean, these guys know how excited I got when this actually was rolled out, because I'm like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that we can do that, right? And we can get cost structures under 1% a year doing this. So 30-year-olds can put in approximately maybe 130% more. 50-year-olds, maybe approximately 75% more. And what's interesting is, if you ever looked at children's policies in the past, you can find that they've been really hard to accumulate very much cash value, because we can't really get much in. But look, if you're 0, if you're 1 year old, you can put in almost 300% of what we used to do. So if you haven't looked at children's policies, you might want to consider doing that. And there is a couple of nice products that have guaranteed insurability riders. I think that people need to have coverage for their children, not because we need to profit from our children, but because if our children die, we're probably in very bad shape. So we might need a little bit of cushion because we might not be able to work full time or work for a while. But more importantly, we want to protect that children's future insurability. So just one little note to keep in mind is that there are good structures we have that we can accumulate some significant wealth for children and have guaranteed insurability options for them moving forward.
Rod,
Okay.
quickly, can you identify, the type of client that would benefit from LIRP and really, would get ears perk up?
Yep, absolutely. So we have a sheet that we call Who Do You Know, right? And this is probably the single most important sheet to use, in my opinion, if you want to intentionally integrate insurance, because we have to identify who we're going to talk to, right? And so right here for that LIRP, what we have is life insurance in retirement planning. So who fits that profile? Generally those between age 25 and 55. Generally those that are already maxed out on their qualified plans and or unable to contribute to a Roth IRA. Now, I know a lot of you have clients that you're engaging in backdoor Roth conversions, which I'm a very big fan of, and it looks like that is going to be closed up here, at least for those earning 400,000 or more into the future. So again, it would be those that want to put more money in their qualified plan but can't, or don't qualify for Roth IRAs. They clearly have to have some discretionary income. And even though we talk about 25 to 55, and that's true, what's more important is that we get a 15-year time horizon or longer. Because what you'll see and what you may already know is that life insurance as an accumulation tool, it can be a really wonderful tool over the long haul, but in the short haul, especially the first 5 to 10 years, it can be very inefficient. And so this is an asset that we have to let mature effectively over time. So having a 15-year runway is probably something that's very significant. And then of course, they need to be interested in tax-deferred growth and they want tax-free assets or access, right?
I don't want that. Tax-free money?
No. Why would you? Yeah, I know. Exactly. Why would you? All right. So before I go into a case study on this, I want to bring up this screen. So generically speaking, this is my graph that graphs term insurance versus permanent insurance. And so this may be somewhat basic, but when I've asked for $1 million of premium, I've also used this basic chart, because if we can't understand this chart, then they're definitely not going to understand the illustration that we're looking at. So what we have is we've got dollars on this side and we've got age on this side. So we're older as we go up, or make that older as we go out, and it's more expensive as we go up. And so what I'm going to show you is a maximum non-MEC premium. So this says VUL, could be VUL. I'm going to show you an IUL, could be a UL. The point is that when you're funding at a non-MEC maximum level, based on this 7702, there's very clear guidance from the IRS exactly how much money we can put in. And I have this illustrated as a dotted line. They'll tell us if we put $1 too much in. And if we put $1 too much in, then we've created a modified endowment contract, which really means that we've ruined the tax favored nature of what we were trying to do. So what we're doing is voluntarily contributing the maximum the IRS is allowing us to do. While we do that, the insurance company is going to charge your client their cost of insurance on this line right here. So cost of insurance on a pure basis gets more and more expensive each and every year. And when we get out to our 70s and 80s, the cost really exceeds or expands dramatically because we're that much closer to life expectancy. And so what happens in these plans is we make this voluntary contribution up here. They take out our cost of insurance, and then the remainder is invested in this cash value. And that cash value, again, generically speaking, can be invested in 3 different ways, or I call them 3 different engines, right? We can be in a fixed engine, like a universal life or a whole life contract. And in today's marketplace, those companies will probably pay us a 3 or 4% return after they take out our costs, right? If we don't want to be relegated to a 3 to 4% return, especially because this is a long-term asset that I'm going to hold for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, maybe I want to be in the market. And if I'm in the market, I can literally put together sub-accounts, just like I can do in a variable annuity or in an IRA, et cetera. And we can pick our investments, and maybe we'll yield between 6 and 9% over time. And we have that investment risk. Nothing wrong with variable structures. We like them as well. What I'll tell you is I personally favor index structures. And I favor them for two reasons. The people that are generally engaging in LERP strategies already have large equity exposures in their retirement accounts and in their brokerage accounts, et cetera. And so when we're instituting this asset class, we are creating an asset class that's not only diversifying away from taxation, but one by which is also diversified away from the market. And so I'm going to show you an example with a 5.7% return. And generally speaking, I think for planning purposes that index policies will likely return between the 4 and 6% range. And when you back test them, I think they do it slightly better than that. But for planning purposes, I think 4 to 6 is probably pretty appropriate. How am I doing, Andrew? Any other comments on that?
Yeah, no, this is great. I would say just kind of backing up before you go into the ledger, once we identify that client, might be a well-to-do professional who is not able to contribute to Roth IRA, maybe it's a business owner, or maybe it's somebody that has contributed to Roth IRA but would like to do above and beyond that. So instead of just saying, hey, I've got something I want to show you, I think it might be wise to get a couple of nods from the client before we say, hey, take a look at this. And a couple of questions might be, hey, do you think the taxes going up or going down in the near future or distant future? And I think we just crossed a 30 trillion, that's with a T, national debt. I think we added about 5 to 6 trillion maybe in the last couple of years with this pandemic. So I think the numbers point to taxes probably going up. And I think the clients will most likely will say, yeah, I think the taxes will go up. And then we can say, well, there are tax advantage vehicles like Roth IRA. Now, you cannot contribute to Roth IRA, or if you can, it's only $6,000. Would you like to have some sort of a similar plan that you could contribute more? How much more would you like to contribute? Well, maybe 20,000, maybe 30,000. So you're already getting some agreements from the client right off the bat. And then you can come out and say, okay, I don't have a Roth IRA, but I have something that has very similar attributes to Roth IRA. Would you like to take a look at this? And let's plug in those numbers specific to you, and let's see how this looks to you. I think now you have the engagement from the client as opposed to saying, hey, let me show you this insurance plan. Here's what it does. Now the client's saying you're trying to sell something, as opposed to you pulling the client in.
No, it's great. I love that. And to back up what you're talking about, I often like to show clients after we ask them what they think are going on with taxes, I pull up this sheet and say, have you ever looked at a sheet like this? This is top federal income tax rates on regular income and capital gains since 1916. And right here shows the top rate on regular income for those that are married with taxable income over X amount. So if you take a look here, look what we have highlighted. Right after the war, we had a highest marginal tax bracket of 94% for those that were earning more than $200,000 a year. Now, I recognize that $200,000 a year was more like $1 million a year, but I also recognize that you probably have a couple clients that earn $1 million a year. I certainly do. And I cannot imagine those individuals having a marginal tax bracket of 94%. I mean, that would just be crazy. I can't imagine that, but these are real numbers. This really happened, right? Well, what about in the 70s? Well, they came down quite a bit. Highest marginal bracket, 70% over 200,000. Now, 200,000 in the 70s was probably around $500,000, right? So once again, I can't imagine a 70% tax bracket, and I sure hope that we don't get there. But 30 trillion in debt, I mean, I don't know where we're going to go, but I know where we've been. We see 94, look at our 80s, we're in the 70s. Well, now we go down here and this chart stops at 2011. Right now it's at 37% at the highest level, right? And so the real question is, are taxes going up or down? And we don't know, but they all point to up. And then the question is, how far up? And we've seen 70% in this country. We've seen 94% in this country. Do I think we're going to see 70 again? I hope not. I don't think so. But I do think we're going to see mid 40s, and I wouldn't be surprised if we pushed up towards 50. And of course, this is only federal, right? Some of our clients are in California. Top bracket there is 12%. You know, if we were at 48% federal and 12% in California, that'd be 60%. That's huge, right? And so the cost of taxes can sometimes be lost on clients. It's often their biggest expense. And so if we're losing taxes, where's my sheet? Taxable equivalent. This is the one I wanted. Okay. So look, our sheet stops at a 40% taxable bracket, right? But if I can get a 5% return and I'm in a 40% bracket, I need to get 8.5, almost 8.5% in a taxable account to yield a 5% tax-free. What I'm going to show you in a minute with these LERPs, you do these things right, we can get the cost drag down to less than 1% a year, right? Less than 1% a year. And in doing so, then the cost of that insurance drag is very likely going to be less than the cost of the insurance drag, or of the tax drag, I should say. And then what that really means is that your clients end up with more money at the very end of the day, like this sheet. Okay, so this sheet is saying life insurance can be part of a tax diversification strategy, which is what I'm describing here, right? If we have multiple buckets that we can pull out from in retirement, we're in a better spot. If we're non-diversified and we only have our dollars in our 401k, I guess I can't highlight this very good, but if we have that, right, depending on our bracket, we might end up with $68,000 if we're in a 32% bracket. Well, what if we can take some money from the 401k, mutual funds at capital gains, and maybe some life insurance, right? We can effectively get higher net income for the client. By the same token, if we happen to believe that taxes are really high and they might come down, we might take money out of our tax-free accounts first and let our tax-deferred accounts kind of marinate longer. And conversely, if we think that taxes are low but might go up and I'm in retirement, maybe I let my tax-free stuff stick around and mature, and instead I take my taxable stuff. But it's a matter of having bent knees and having multiple buckets to pull from and multiple tax buckets to pull from.
Or if the market is on a downward slope, last thing you want to do is pull money out from an account that's decreasing, right? So maybe again, this is where you can divest with the index UL, still get the flavor of the index of the market without any downside risk. And if the market is going down, you maybe stop pulling from investable assets. You pull more from tax-free dollars from the life insurance, and then get back to taxable investable assets too.
That's right. And the key, what happens here is people are ignoring this asset class. And they're ignoring it, in my opinion, because it's insurance that I don't want, it's too expensive, and I don't want to talk to the insurance person. Well, I understand all of that, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about having a diversified asset. So take a look at this chart. I'm sure you're looking at it. It's really the same chart I just showed you, but in a different visual. This visual is amazing. This is what's happened with taxes. Look, they went up, went way down, went way up, came way back down again, right? So where is this going? That's the question. Where's it going? Is it going here, 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 or here? Okay, and we don't know, but we want to, again, be nimble so that we can make that happen. So what I have here is a snapshot. So these are my 3 strategies, and we're going to focus first on this top strategy. So what I'm going to show you here is a 45-year-old male at preferred rates, understanding that that is second best rates, and understand that part of why these LERP strategies can work so well is that clients have to qualify for them, right? So there's a lot of reasons to think that the insurance is bad, but the insurance is good if you have to qualify and you can qualify and you have an asset that looks this good. And so I'm going to show you a supplemental retirement income or a LERP using IUL with Symetra, showing a $34,000 contribution, the maximum contribution that can be made for a $504,000 death benefit for a 45-year-old male. I solve for all of these to create a $10,000 first year commission. So in order to generate a $10,000 first year commission in this product, we're generally going to need to contribute $34,000 a year and buy $504,000 of death benefit. And what I'm going to show you is we're going to fund that for 20 years because that's going to get him out to age 65. He's going to stop funding it, and now he's going to have this life insurance retirement plan available to him in retirement as one of his buckets, right? So that shows up right here. So this is assuming a 5.7% return, knowing that we're invested in an S&P 500 with a 9% cap. In this case, what that means is if the S&P gets 10 or 12 or 20, you're not going to get 10 or 12 or 20. You're going to get 9. You're going to be capped. But by the same token, in an exchange, when the S&P goes down 1%, 5%, or 20%, there will be no loss in the investment account, you'll just be credited 0. So the indexed account bounces from 0 to 9 in that case, and we're assuming that on average we're going to earn 5.7%. And just like every illustration, the moment that it's presented, it is effectively wrong, because this is assuming that we get 5.7% every single year on the nose, and certainly that won't happen. But let's look at how this works. So year one, we put $34,000 in. By the end of year one, we have $29,000 in the policy value. Okay, we got 5.7%, but the cost was so high, including first year commission, that at the end of the year, there's only $29,000 in the account. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I would say it's a bad thing, right? But it's the cost of acquisition, and this is a long-term asset. To further this issue of $29,000, we do have a surrender charge. So if your client gave us $34,000 for 1 year, earned 5.7%, and then wanted out of this thing, they would be able to walk out with $10,006, and that would be a very bad deal for them. And in fact, they would have lost 68% of their money, right? So the first thing we have to understand is that if they're not committed for the long term, this strategy does not make sense. However, should death occur in the first year, at the end of the year, we have a death benefit of $533,000. That represents a 1,400% return on what? On our $34,000. We gave the company $34,000. Gentleman unfortunately passed away. His heirs got $533,000, and that represents a 1,400% return. Now I want to jump to here. This is year 7. This is kind of the break-even year, right? That now our dues are paid. So we're over 7 years. We put $34,000 in 7 times. We have an account value of $250. We have a surrender value of $240. Now our actual return was 0.2. So if you were following me, you're like, Rod, you really hyped this thing up and this looks like garbage. And mathematically over 7 years, I agree with you. But look what happens over the next few years, okay? What happens if we get out that 20 years and now he's contributed $680,000 into this policy? By the way, he's had protection the whole way of life insurance protection should he die. That life insurance protection has grown to $1.6 million. So if he happens to pass away before he can take any money out of this, he's going to represent a 7.85% return to his heirs on an income tax-free basis. People think life insurance is garbage. Well, a 7.85% return isn't so bad on a tax-free basis. But that's not why we did this, right? We did this for the cash value. So his cash value grew from 680 to 1.1, and that 1.1 represents a 4.74% return. So what that is that's an internal rate of return net of all costs. And so we got a 5.7% return over that period of time, but the client didn't get 5.7, they got 4.7. So for less than 100 basis points per year, what they received was this insurance that's been growing every single year. And they've created this tax-free bucket, this quote, super Roth IRA, which if you're broker dealer affiliated is a non-compliant thing to say, but it effectively has a lot of the same attributes as a Roth IRA, except for what? There's no overall limit to how much money that you can put in, and it doesn't matter how much money you earn. We've had clients that have put $1 million a year into these types of contracts for exactly this reason. And so again, if we go to that taxable equivalent yield, if we got a 4.75%, I don't have that here, let's just assume it's 5. Well, again, what client is buying this? They might be in this 40% bracket. And so the cost of taxes is 3.5% in that case, and my cost of insurance is only 1%, and this stops at 40. Okay, what happens when this is 50 or 60? Right, so that's what I want to relate to you. And Andrew, Rod, what do you think?
Yeah, if you can go back to that ledger.
Yep.
And again, this is not a knock on, Dave Ramsey, but, you listen to some of these financial gurus on TV and they say, stay away from these types of plans because they're very expensive. They're very expensive. Well, what does that mean? Well, if you're going to surrender this contract in the first year, it's going to be expensive. But again, the story, take a look at that difference between the net rate of return that's illustrated, which is 5.7%, and an IRR on cash surrender value, let's say at age, let's do age 67 or 68. You're looking at 5%, 5.06%, and the difference is about 70, 60 bips. So really the cost is only 60 bips to put this plan in place, and now you're able to pull out tax-free income, as you can see, cash surrender value at 67 is $1.3 million. And now you can use withdrawals, switch to policy loans, and the entire income stream is going to come out on a tax-free basis like it was a Roth IRA. So if you put this kind of setup for the client and explain the cost in this kind of matter, I think the client will definitely see for themselves that these plans, when properly structured, are not expensive at all. And we haven't showed the tax-free income here, but from $1.3 million, I can guess that you can probably generate about $70,000-$80,000 of tax-free income a year.
Yep. That's exactly right. And so it can be incredible. So we have to understand how to use the right tool in the right way, right? And that's what this is all about. And if you do it the right tool in the right way, what we're showing you here is that we can get that cost down to less than 1%. Now, of course, I understand that I'm talking with a bunch of wealth advisors, and I've worked with over 200 wealth advisors. So I know on average what you guys charge on your AUM. And a lot of times it exceeds 1%. And so when you really think about it, a 1% cost drag is not bad. But you really do have to, in my opinion, have to marry this kind of strategy. See, because the client gets hurt if they don't let this thing mature, right? If they want to take money right here and they have a 3% return, now they have a 2.7% cost drag, almost half of it, right? That's not a good deal. This is a long-term asset. But if you're in the financial planning business, you're often bucketing assets to begin with. You got short, mid, and long-term buckets. This is a long-term bucket, right? So before I move to the next strategy, does anybody out there have any questions? If you do, go ahead and unmute yourself or throw something in chat. George, you have anything to add? All right, somehow I got muted.
Sorry.
George, if you're trying to talk, we can't hear you.
I think I got put into the audience there, but anyway, what I was saying is just that as you open the ears, as Andrew pointed out, not with all the technical and maybe even the numbers quite yet, but then as you get permission to introduce this concept, then things like showing the loan or withdrawal income, very meaningful numbers, 80,000 divided by 12, however you want to show it. That's exactly what people are talking about in their supplement. They'll buy a lot more than groceries. Could probably get you a trip to Florida and many other added things that, Social Security and some of the other retirement vehicles won't. So this is a powerful, powerful income generator. And that can be shown as we get to that stage, not immediately, but as we have the ears open.
Yep, thanks, George. Last thing I would make note is that, what I've shown you here is a unit.
Hey, Rod, sorry to interrupt. Can you pop the historical tax chart one more time?
Yep.
Somebody from the audience is asking for that.
Right here. Kind of can't fit it all on one screen. Let me try to go.
And we can get that to you, and we will get this information to you after the webinar.
Yep.
Or you can call us to request it.
Okay. Beautiful. So the last thing that I wanted to mention was that, $34,000 is the maximum that goes into a $533,000 policy effectively. If the client likes this structure, but just wants to do $12,000, well, then this will come down proportionately, right? If we took a third of the $34,000, then we would only need a third of the death benefit. Right, so this is fundamentally different than term insurance, where we want to get the highest death benefit with the lowest contribution. Well, we want the opposite. We want the lowest death benefit with the highest contribution. And so understand, if you're talking this strategy, then they can just tell you the exact number. You know what? $1,500 a month is what I'm comfortable with, and then we can resolve and buy the smaller death benefit, and then we're going to see very, very similar performance as we move forward. Okay, anything else? I'm going to move to the next one, guys. All right. Next one's wealth transfer, right? So this idea is a lot of our clients have dollars that they're not going to use. And if those dollars happen to be in qualified accounts, qualified accounts are the worst account, the worst accounts to transfer wealth to future generations. And it got even worse in the Secure Act, which you may be aware of, that requires non-spousal beneficiaries to take all of the IRA dollars over a maximum of 10 years. And that can become very problematic for beneficiaries, especially successful beneficiaries, because as you can imagine, those dollars have to come out and they're taxed at the highest marginal tax bracket. And again, what bracket are we going to be in? So if you have clients that have large qualified balances, especially those that are taking RMDs that wish they weren't, okay, I know many anecdotal examples of clients that are pretty upset that they have to take RMDs. And why do they have to take RMDs, by the way? Is it not so that the government can finally get the taxation that they've never got on that? I think the answer is yes. So they're requiring a spend down. And oftentimes there's money left for the future generations, and then you can see a good third or 40% or maybe 60% if it's future dollars and somebody in California, right? And so once again, a lot of people are thinking, well, why would why would a 60-year-old couple buy life insurance? They don't need life insurance. This is just some sales ploy by some insurance commission guy that wants to make a large commission. In fact, he told us that he wanted to make $10,000. Okay. Well, I got to tell you, clients who buy this because they understand it's an asset class. They understand that they want this asset class, and this asset class is guaranteed by the claims paying ability of a company. It's non-correlated to the market with no market exposure and income tax free to the heirs. And so if we really think about that, we can say, would you like an asset with those attributes? And if so, let me show you how life insurance could work for that purpose. Right? So it's the non-traditional use of life insurance. And so what I'm going to show you here, again, I solved to get to this $10,000 number. And I'm going to use a second to die policy with John Hancock with an annual premium of $14,727. That's going to buy $1.2 million of death benefit. Okay. Now this is a different strategy than the LERP strategy. Remember the LERP strategy, I wanted to stuff as much cash in as I could and keep the death benefit low. Here, I want the death benefit as high as possible, and I want to contribute the least. So it's a complete opposite strategy, and I want to make sure you understand that. And so by putting $14,000 a year away, we get a $1.2 million death benefit that is guaranteed to their age 92. So I'm going to show you the illustration in a minute, but that's a 32-year guarantee that as long as they pay their premium and don't access any cash value, that this $1.2 million is going to remain in force. Then if we get at least a 4% return internally, it will also stay in force all the way to age 120. So we've got a really nice guarantee, and with reasonable performance, and some could even argue relatively low performance, this thing will last to age 120, which is the actuarial age by which all of us will be dead. So 120 seems like a funky number, but it's what the actuaries tell us is effectively a lifetime guarantee, right? And as I mentioned, that death benefit's non-correlated to the market. Why? Because the death benefit's going to be 120 no matter what happens in the market. If the market is soaring or whether we're having a 30% correction, if death occurs at that time, $1.2 million paid, non-correlated, right? By the way, the value doesn't move up and down at all. It stays right at 1.2. And then it's income tax free to the heirs. And what's the cost of taxes, right? That's what we need to be thinking about. And so that's what this illustration shows. So this is standard plus 50-year-old or 60-year-old male and 60-year-old female, noting that standard plus for John Hancock is effectively a standard rate for most other carriers. So John Hancock and Prudential generally will take a little bit more risk than other insurance companies, and so their standard plus is generally equal to another carrier's standard rating. And so here's how this thing works. So again, we got surrender value and death benefit. Remember, this is death benefit focused, not surrender value focused, okay? And so year one, they put in their $14,000. If they were to die, both of them in year one, it would turn into $1.2 million and we would have an 8,000% return. Now the likelihood of that happening is going to be very low because the insurance companies have underwritten these individuals, right, in order for this to occur. So they're probably not going to die in year one, but they could. And if they did, it would be the best performing asset of their entire portfolio at 8,000. See, clients don't think about this and advisors don't think about this. The insurance is expensive. Why is grandma paying $14,000 a year? Why are you charging grandpa $14,000 a year? We're not. What we're doing is we're repositioning $14,000 that's in grandma's left pocket, and we're putting it in grandma's right pocket to create an asset worth $1.2 million. To determine whether that asset is a good deal or a bad deal, we have to know when they're going to pass away. And what I'm relaying to you right now is if they pass away in year one, it's the best deal ever on the face of the earth. Probably not going to happen. What if they get out to age 80? Now they've put in $294,000. Oh my God, this cost $294,000. No, it didn't. We repositioned $294,000 into an asset worth $1.2 million. If death occurs 20 years from now, that represents a 12% return. 12% return guaranteed by John Hancock, non-correlated to the market, income tax-free to the heirs. If you're with me so far, you go, that's fine, Rod, but what happens in another 10 years? Good question. Another 10 years, they're 90 years old, probably gone by now. Okay? Actuarially, that would be true. They've put in $441,000. Did it cost them $441,000? No, we contributed $441,000. Why did we do that? Because we have $1.2 million asset. Look at this return, 5.85%. This is a fixed asset, right, guys? This is not an equity asset. This is a fixed asset. If I could bring you a fixed asset that would guarantee to pay your clients 5.85% on a guaranteed basis, income tax-free over 30 years, would you put any of your clients' money in it? Would you consider repositioning $441,000 of your clients' money in an asset that wasn't life insurance that was going to return 5.85%? I would say that, yeah, you probably would, and I wouldn't need to do these webinars either because you guys would line up outside my door and around the block if I could give you this asset and it wasn't called life insurance at 5.85.
And what is that tax equivalent IRR?
Let's try to look. Again, I don't have it perfectly, so let's use 5.5 to be fair. It's at least 9.32 in this 40% bracket.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible, right? But again, I want to be fair, okay? I don't like to be a hype man, even though I get excited about this. I want to be fair. One of them might live longer than that, right? What if they live to 100? What are we dealing with here? And by the way, only one of them needs to live to 100, right? So now they've repositioned $560,000. It's a lot. But they got back 1.2 million. This is a 3.2% return. Now, is that as sexy? No. But is that a bad return for a fixed asset that's going to pay income tax-free over 40 years? That's a pretty darn good asset in my opinion. And I think most people are throwing this strategy out because they don't want to insure grandma. But I say grandma doesn't need this. Grandma wants this. And by the way, what's this $1.2 million really going to do? It's really going to create liquidity for the heirs. And the liquidity is going to be needed for maybe one of three reasons. Number one, to pay taxes on any qualified accounts or maybe brokerage accounts. Secondly, it might help pay taxes on a state tax basis if the client is subject to state or federal estate taxes. And thirdly, might provide liquidity to be able to liquidate some of their harder assets like real estate, right? We don't want to put our clients and our beneficiaries certainly in a position of weakness where they need to raise cash and they need to sell hard assets like real estate, maybe in a poor market. So life insurance shows up how? In straight up cash. So is there any value in a estate plan to say, you know what, once you guys die, we're going to spring some cash right into the portfolio for these reasons? And so I really want you to be thinking about clients that could potentially do this. And again, it's a unit. So if they like this structure, but they said, yeah, you know what, I don't think 14,000 makes sense, but let's do 5,000. Okay, so 5,000 is roughly a third. And then that means that this 1.2 would come down roughly by 2/3. So they would buy a $400,000 policy and the math would run through the almost identically. We'd still have these types of returns. So I want you to note that when I do present these, I again present them as units so they can understand the concept. And if they understand the concept, then we just have to get a contribution, not a premium, but a contribution budget. And then we can work backwards. Okay. Andrew, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is great. This is one of my favorite products from a great company, and the leverage is amazing. So, a couple of client types that come to mind. First of all, somebody in their 60s, 70s with high concentration of qualified assets. Somebody that has their income maybe already set, so when RMDs come out or will come out, chances are they will not need those RMDs for income. So then the question becomes, well, would you like to saddle your non-spousal beneficiaries with this tax bomb that will bump them into all kinds of higher income tax brackets? Or would you rather reposition some of those current or future RMDs and leverage inside a plan like this that would completely sidestep Uncle Sam and have a tax-free death benefit to your children? And quite frankly, once you have that kind of liquidity, it's going to be also so much easier for those beneficiaries to divvy up the assets. There might be some farm that one person may want to farm, the other one doesn't want to do anything without it. Well, if you have life insurance proceeds, you can just buy out your sibling. But if you don't have that kind of liquidity, and if you inherit the IRA assets, and now on top of that you have to pay maybe 40% to Uncle Sam, that's not a good deal.
Yep, that's right. So again, it's using the right tool and for the right job. If you're a good wealth advisor, you have multiple tools at your disposal. What we're really indicating and impressing upon you is if you don't have these tools at your disposal, please consider having them at your disposal. And we're very familiar with how to do these and how to do them in the context of the financial plan. All right, so we're going to move on then to the last strategy, which I call retirement portfolio protection. If people are adverse to buying life insurance, and I believe they are, I think they're more adverse to buying long-term care insurance. And I believe it's because we're in denial about death, but everybody sort of knows that they'll die. But I think there's a greater denial in needing somebody to help me with my sanitary duties. And so there's a very big resistance, in my opinion, to long-term care insurance. But I happen to believe that that's the single most important planning item that our clients are going to have to deal with, because there is an awful lot of our clients that are going to need long-term care, and it costs an awful lot as well. And so what I suggest to you and how I present to clients is we talk about this as retirement portfolio protection. What I believe is that if one of our clients needs care, they're going to get the care that they need. And if they get the care they need, it's going to cost something, and they're going to pay for it. They're going to pay for it until they cannot pay for it any longer. And the real question is, what's the impact going to be when we have to double dip into the retirement portfolio to pay for one person's care while trying to have the other person maintain their independence and their regular retirement income, right? So we can stress test. And if you're using a financial planning software like MoneyGuide Pro or eMoney, you can quite easily model in a future long-term care event and quantify what the impact would be on the investment and income, right? So it's really insuring their retirement assets. And by default, it's effectively insuring your AUM. Because if you're not bringing solutions for the client to put long-term care protection in place for themselves, and they do have an event and they do need to pull money, what's the likelihood that they're going to be pulling money from your portfolio? And what's the impact going to be on your fee revenue if that happens? And what's the impact going to be if that happens in a down market? Right? And so much like everything else, we need to be able to have our clients consider whether or not they should utilize some kind of structure to provide that type of protection. So Andrew pulled together some really great statistics that Lincoln put together for their hybrid products, right? And hopefully you guys can see this pretty good. So these are real numbers from a real carrier that's strong in this space. And what they're telling us is that any given month, they're generally paying out between $5 and $8 million for long-term care services every single month. Okay.
So they are paying the claims out. They're not just denying claims left and right.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, that's very true. And look at this, the average length of claim for them, 23 months, right? And not surprising to me, but maybe to some of you, is where is the care being provided? 46% of the time in assisted living or residential care, another 46% of the time at home. Everyone thinks that this is nursing home coverage, and it's just not the case. It's my belief that people do not go into nursing homes voluntarily. They do that when it's the last cause. So again, if your client says, well, I'm not going to a nursing home, you say, good, I don't want you to either. What if I told you over 90% of the care performed from Lincoln has been done either in assisted living or home healthcare settings? Would that surprise you? See, I think what our clients really want is a plan that helps them stay safe at home and helps protect the healthy spouse, not only from asset spend down, but from having to provide the care themselves, because it can be in a very emotional time when that occurs. I did think this was interesting. Average time from issue to claim, 13 years. So if the average age at claim is 83, and the average time from issue to claim is 13 years, that's approximately age 70 in that case, right? So you've got to be able to, and that speaks to underwriting too, because I'm not surprised that the average time from issue to claim isn't 2 years. I'd be shocked if that was the case, because these are professionally underwritten, right? And so if they underwrite and they think that there's a likelihood that someone's going to need this care early on, they're probably going to decline that coverage. And then again, this didn't surprise me, but might surprise you. 71% are female and 29 are male. Why? Well, it's really because males die younger than women, right? And so what that means is long-term care is effectively an outgrowth of living a long life. To the extent we live a long life, the likelihood that we need help living that long life exceeds, it increases. And so we see that women's prevalence for long-term care is higher, and men predecease women on average by 5 to 7 years. And so you'll see that pricing for long-term care is more expensive for women than it is for men. Anything else on this topic, Andrew, before I go into showing the solution?
Yeah, I'll just segue in. Yeah, these numbers are great. And I saw one article, it says, women buy long-term care, but men buy returns. So having said that, that's why these hybrid products are so popular right now, because quite frankly, whether you use long-term care or you don't, you will get something back. And that's really key to understand and buy in, have the buy-in from the couples, especially the men in the family, because it says to get a man's buy-in, you may have to show him something that isn't a waste of money if the policy is little or never used, and present it as a solution that provides a return one way or the other. So this just perfectly tees up the hybrid product.
Yeah, it sure does. It's perfect. And you know that I believe in touching the heart before you touch the mind. And what you're describing is, with you have a husband and a wife, on average, you're going to need to touch the wife's heart, and you're going to have to touch the man's brain. Now that's generic, but that's really what's end up happening. We can do both through that process. And so what I'm going to show you is we reposition a $100,000. Again, oh my gosh, it costs $100,000. No, it doesn't. This is a repositioning of dollars from a left pocket to a right pocket. What it costs is the opportunity cost from where this money is coming. If it comes from your portfolio at 7%, it might cost us $7,000 a year, and we might not reposition money that's inside your portfolio, and often we don't see that. Where we do see the money coming from is money that's sitting in cash or in bank accounts, right? Earning almost nothing. It's been a while since I looked up the average 5-year CD, but within the last 2 months, I know that was less than 50 bips, which is crazy. We see what's happening with inflation too. So money in bank accounts are effectively losing money safely, in my opinion. And by the way, it's not under management either. And so you start asking clients what their plan is for long-term care, and you ask them what kind of assets they might have in the bank and how they feel about inflation and losing their money safely. This is where we can easily find that they can reposition $100,000 each. Okay. Now, on a quick snapshot basis, the Mister in this plan can get $4,900 a month for long-term care for 4 years with a 3% inflation protection. And the Mrs. here can get $4,600. So noting that we're taking the same 100,000, but the wife is not able to get quite as much because she has a higher risk of actually needing it. And before I go off of this screen, knowing that we've just got 5 more minutes left, I want to reiterate that this was about finding 12 clients and 3 strategies. So strategy 1 pays $10,000, strategy 2 $10,000, strategy 3 $6,500 for a $100,000 contribution. Understanding just one of them would have to do that, totaling $26,000 of approximate first-year commission. And if we multiply that by 4 clients, that's how we got to $106,000. Okay, so this is very doable. I mean, you're talking to 12 people, 1 person per month to be able to do this. So let me show you how this works. So this is Mr. Mrs. works exactly the same. Her numbers are just a little bit smaller. Notice that these are all guaranteed values, and they're guaranteed based on the claims paying ability of Securian, which is a Minnesota life company. So what you have is effectively 3 account values here. You have your premium, your annual contribution, one time $100,000, creates a surrender value. So if we get out 6 years or beyond, we have a $100,000 surrender, which means that we can get our money back if we decide that we change our mind for some reason.
Return a premium.
Return a premium, exactly. If instead we pass away and never need the care, is that $100,000 gone? No. If it happens in the first year, $131,000 is paid to the heirs. It ultimately reduces to $119,000 and it stays there forever. By the way, this is out 30 years at age 89. This product does run to 120. Okay, so if they live to 120, they would get $119,000 back, right? So we either take our money back, or we die without needing long-term care, or we need long-term care. So in year 1, our $100,000 creates a pool of long-term care of almost $250,000, which is around $60,000 a year, $4,900 a month for 4 years. So we've taken this 100 that was in the bank earning 1% or less, we turned it into $249,000 on day 1 for long-term care purposes. We turned it into $131,000 on day 1 for death benefit purposes. And most importantly, our long-term care benefit is growing by 3% every year, right? So what did our 82, right?
Yeah.
Here's age 82. That's when Lincoln, another company that has a similar structure here, said that their average claim is, right? So now we're out 82 years. We had the $100,000. They can still get it back if they want. If they die that year, they have $119,000. But look at this. They almost 5x'd their $100,000 for long-term care purposes, $478,000 that they can get at $114,000 a year or $9,500 per month. Look at this number. This is the internal rate of return. This is saying if you, the advisor, were to take this $100,000 and over a 23-year period of time grew it to $478,000, you would have to receive a 6.75% return. Is that possible? Yes, absolutely possible. Would it be taxable in that account? Probably. This one's non-taxable. But most importantly, what is this again? Oh, it's guaranteed, it's non-correlated, and it's income tax-free to the heirs. So does it make sense to perhaps do this? I've also created a unit. If this makes sense, you go, you know what? Let's just give them 50 grand instead. We'll invest the other 50. Because what I would say is, depending on when care is performed, I would say this product is more likely to outperform the investment account for about 25 years here. But if care is not needed until they're 95, now we got a 5.42% return, and we've increased to 702. I think the longer in the future, which is generically true of all insurance, the sooner a claim occurs, the better math equation we have. And the longer it occurs, the worse math equation. But again, this is just an asset class that has complementary attributes that the investment account does not have. And so when you look at this kind of number, I think these are pretty outstanding. Now, how can they do this? How can they do it? Well, first of all, it's only the long-term care number. If they don't need long-term care, they only got 119,000. I don't know what the return is from 100 to 119 over 23 years, but it's basically 0. Let's call it 10 bips, right? So what they're doing is they're giving up interest on their asset today to leverage it dramatically for long-term care tomorrow. And of course, the client wouldn't give up all their assets to do this. It'd be a portion, which is what you've heard us say all day today, is that let's create an asset class and consider using that asset class that can do things that other asset classes cannot do. All right, we're at 1:59, right at the top of the hour. Andrew, how do we close this one up?
Yeah, a couple of things. So first of all, I want to give a plug to Securi and SecurCare. This is the product that you just highlighted, Life and OTC Hybrid. The reason we like this product so much is because it's 100% cash indemnity plan. What that means is that the client, once they go on claim, literally receives a check from the insurance company on a tax-free basis. And not only that they receive the check, they can also pay informal care providers. That means sons, daughters, spouses, neighbors, anybody that could be reimbursed with that money. So that is huge. That allows all kinds of flexibility for couples to stay at home and receive care from the people that they trust and love. And also look at it as income. So, we talked about if you don't need long-term care, you only get a death benefit, right? And a death benefit is barely above the initial deposit. But really, I look at long-term care as a catastrophic expense and catastrophic stress, against the client's portfolio. And really, we buy these products not to enrich ourselves, but to protect our portfolio. So we're looking really at the long-term care numbers here first and foremost. And as a safety net, if we don't need long-term care, the spouse gets the death benefit, the heirs gets the death benefit tax-free. The money is really not lost. It's the opportunity that is lost. And then one last thing, this product is getting a reprice. We just received notice March 28th. Is when the product 3.0 version will come out. That means that the cost will go up, I guarantee you, probably somewhere 20-25%. So we have about a good month right now to approach our clients and, like you said, reposition their lazy assets, non-qualified CDs, savings. This product does have flex pay options, so you don't have to do single pay. You can do a 5-pay, even a 10-pay option as well, and maybe even use qualified money and spread it out over time. But we do have until 28th to get the most competitive pricing on this product right now.
It's beautiful. Appreciate that, Andrew. So again, thank you all for your time. What we suggest you do is pay attention to our Coaches Corners. Our next one is March 17th. If you haven't already taken a look at our toolbox, reach out to Andrew or George or myself, and we'll get that to you. It has everything we need to intentionally integrate insurance into your practice. And then really what we're hoping you'll do is reach out to one of us on your next case. We just gave you 3 good solutions. And if we implement them with 12 individuals, we can find $100,000 or more in your practice just this year. And we exist to serve you. If we do that right, we do the right thing. We drive revenue, we protect AUM, we create competitive immunity, and we create win-win relationships for everyone. I did flash up on the screen contact information for both George and Andrew, and all the material that you saw here today is available to you and can be sent out to you by Andrew or George. And I guess with that, any last comments from you, Andrew or George? Otherwise, we'll wrap this call up.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully this was beneficial to you, and maybe you grabbed a couple nuggets that you can apply in your practice. And we're certainly here to help you with any of these solutions.
I agree. Be the one to ask, because they will be asking you. That's a trend for sure.
All right. Appreciate everyone. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you in March.
Take care.